Is Ken going to come with an introduction?
Yeah. So,
puppies are much fun. That puppy, you gotta love it.
Are you going to sit in the middle? I figured we'd sit off to the back. So.
Hey, wait a minute. I got called away. Oh, my AV guy's here. Thank God for a crack AV guy.
Already left.
He did enough of it.
I was on
perfectly convention.
I'm so sorry. I was 5 minutes late. I got caught by a group of I was going to do a fast intro. I'm going to stand here real fast and say, shut up! I'm very sorry. I gave away the talk tonight. Everybody knows I love to do the talks. Carolyn Brandt's here. Yeah. Aaron and Chris are here. And they've already interviewed her. They did all the stuff for Severin, for the book, for the Steckler book. I think they're going to do a way better job than me. And you know, the one thing my buffoon ass is always willing to do is let somebody else who's better than me take over things. So you guys all introduce yourself, except for Carolyn. We all know Carolyn Brandt. But Chris, Aaron, introduce yourselves.
Aaron's written a great introduction
For Carolyn.
for Carolyn.
Yes. Well, let's introduce ourselves then, I guess. So
Please, people don't know who the hell you are.
That's right.
They knew who the fat guy is, so, and I'm not doing the talk. So
there's comedian microphones there if you guys want to use them.
yeah,
Microphone?
we call those.
Can people hear me
One,
back
two.
there?
No, please use the microphone.
Use microphone? Okay,
Yes.
all right.
That's why we have.
I'm not a singer. Can you hear me now? All right. So you want to go first?
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm Aaron AuBuchon. I have written a few articles about the films that Carolyn's been in, and I did 2 commentaries on the box set that Severin has just put out. One for PFINK A BOO BOO and one for the CHOOPER. So I'm excited to be here. Very, very excited to be here. Chris?
Okay. Somewhere about 5 years ago, I started writing a book on Ray Dennis Steckler. And it's due to come out, I think, November of this year. And so I'm very excited. I have talked with Carolyn many, many times. And through our friend John Kitley, who is snapping shots right here, I met Aaron AuBuchon, and we've become quick friends. And so that's it. So I have the Ray book coming out, and he wrote a really nice introduction to get this Q&A going.
Yeah, well, so we just made the assumption that folks know who Carolyn is, but a quick introduction if you don't. Carolyn Brandt has acted in a variety of films, most of which were directed by her then-husband, Ray Dennis Steckler. Probably best known for roles in films such as, and you can clap, The Incredibly Strange Creatures Who Stopped Living and Became Mixed Up Zombies.
Yeah!
All right. The Thrill Killers. And there we go. Chris's favorite, and my favorite, PFINK A BOO BOO. Can you tell? Her career as a performer in films was mostly from the years of 1962 until 1980, and excitingly for all of us today, this is her first real convention appearance ever, besides a single Q&A, a single convention appearance at an event in Sacramento shortly before Ray passed away. So I thought we might start at the beginning. And you grew up in San Francisco, but how did you get into acting?
My grandfather would take me to the Warfield Theater, and they had these wonderful movie musicals, and he would also take me to some of the art films. So I just fell in love with acting. Fortunately, my stepfather took me to Elizabeth Holloway School of Drama. He wanted me to have proper English, so I did study there. And I lost a lot of it, but I kept some of it. But that's how I started. And on a trip to Pasadena Playhouse one summer, which led to meeting a friend there, also from San Francisco, who got me involved with Abbott Abrams' Workshop, where I actually started doing stage productions. Some of them the nuns did not approve of, but I did them anyway. And, well, that's how I got started. Oh,
Yep. No.
That's how you got started.
okay. In San Francisco.
So I guess the next question would obviously be,
I mean, do you want to do this one?
I was going to ask how she met Ray.
Okay, so you don't want to do this one.
The ones in italics are for maybe for later.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that is a short trip from there to meeting Ray.
Okay, well, to pick up, moved down to Hollywood in my last year in high school, finished up at Immaculate Heart, and was just kind of bopping around. My parents had put me into the Studio Club, which was a home for women who were trying to break into films. They went back up to San Francisco, left me down there. So I just was, let me think. Just kind of bopping around trying to find a place and look at where I could go. I am going dry at this point.
This is where you were on the Sinbad.
Okay.
The
So one of
Carpet
the
of Sinbad or Magic of Sinbad.
it was the Magic of
Okay,
Sinbad. It
right.
was. I had been working with a dance group, and somehow or other we wound up in this pilot. It was a TV pilot with Tommy Reddick, and he was playing Sinbad. I was one of the dancing girls. I was up there with Tommy on the flying carpet, and Ray walked in the door.
What was Ray doing? What was his work there? Why was he on that set?
He had just moved to California about 2 or 3 weeks before that, and he and his buddy from Reading were kind of bopping around. They'd bumped into Tim Carey, and they were looking at just trying to get their foot in the door like we all were.
And so what was Ray like when you first met him?
Very eager, very dedicated, just loved film. He loved film from a little boy back in Reading with an 8mm camera. It was always in his blood, something he wanted, had to do.
What captivated you about Ray that you went out with him and then eventually married him?
Aside from his persistence.
He had to have some sort of charm.
Oh, Ray was very charismatic. He really was. It's amazing that he didn't get further than he did based upon the fact that he had so much charisma. And he got me with it.
Good for him.
Thank you.
Way to go. So skip ahead a little bit, I guess. 1962, Ray got the opportunity to work as an assistant cameraman on Arch Hall Senior's Ega, which is your first labeled film role, right?
Right. I did do a bit part in Secret File Hollywood. I was a beatnik dancer in that.
I guess that came out after. You did that one before, and then that one
Yes.
came out after Ega. So in the filmography, it works that way. So how did that Ega role, or how did that opportunity with Ega come about for both you and Ray?
Oh, let me see. Ega was the one. That was one of Arch Hall's.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Okay. So.
I guess the main question people would be interested in is what was it like to hang out with Richard Kiel?
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, Jaws was not Jaws yet, but he was just, a gentle giant and a gentleman. He was just a sweet, sweet guy. I didn't get the closest I got to him was when he picked up Ray and threw him in the swimming pool. And I ran over and gave Ray a martini.
Tell the story when you met him later and he shook your hand.
Oh, yes, I was down on Hollywood Boulevard, Hollywood and Vine, actually, and he was there with another tall gentleman, and they were handing out leaflets about one of the movies that they were coming up to be in. And I walked over to say hello to him because we had been in the film together, and put out my hand. He took it, and his hand was probably about 5 times the size of mine. It just kind of disappeared in there. That's just a little short anecdote, but
I have a funny aside that
Yeah, okay.
I have a funny aside that Laura told me. Your daughter Tickles.
Yeah.
Everybody knows Tickles. She told me that She was with Richard Kiel at one point, and she walked up to him and said, "You worked with my father, Ray Steckler." And Richard Kiel put his on her and said, "That's Ray Dennis Steckler." A little funny aside there.
So I guess we'll jump more ahead then I guess that Arch Hall liked working with Ray, because he said, okay, now I'm going to let you direct a film, which is pretty crazy to go from assistant camera to director for Wild Guitar. So what was that? How did that happen? How did that jump happen?
Ray was persistent, and he really wanted to do all of those aspects. He wanted to film it. He had his vision, and he felt that's why he went into the acting side of it. Well, the reason why he was in which one was it? It was Wild Guitar. Was that they lost one of the actors as they were beginning to shoot, and so it was a last-minute replacement. Well, Ray hated to waste film, and he couldn't stand wasting time, which is also money. So he jumped in, and many times he said, I know the leading man is going to show up because I'm the leading man.
So a few people have asked me, and I'm just going to ask you if you'll do it at some point this weekend. I keep having people come up and say, do you think she'll do the dance from Wild Guitar? Do you think you can do the dance from Wild Guitar for
I
folks at some
don't
point?
have my veil with me.
That is a great dance, and it's a great set. Would you tell the people that set was used for a play?
Yes, it was at the Ivar Theater, and they were doing a play called The Blacks, and I had been working as an usher there. And you know, everything works in Hollywood as contacts.
Well, you and Ray both worked as ushers there, correct?
Probably.
Yeah. And that set, that incredible set, if you've ever seen Wild Guitar, an incredible set that she dances on while Arch Hall is playing guitar is an amazing set. It's an amazing stage set.
It is. And that I remember Nancy Czar grabbed my veil and ran up the ramp with it, and I was a little perturbed because you don't touch other people's props.
These are the things we want to hear.
So it's like a pretty big leap, right? So he goes from assistant camera, and you've got a part in there, and then he gets to direct, and you've got a part in there, and then 64 comes around, and now he's directing a film that is sort of his own vision, right? The Incredibly Strange Creatures Who Stopped Living and Became Mixed Up Zombies. How did that come about? How did you end up with that film?
Well, I was dancing with Turner and Smith. They were a couple of choreographers who had put up several shows in Vegas, and they were getting ready to do one in San Francisco, and I'd gone to the audition, got the part, and we were chatting, and they had done a couple of ice shows before, and I said, Nancy Czar was in this movie that we made. She was an ice skater. And they said, she was in our show. And I said, well, you know, really, you and Ray should talk because you have a lot of combined interests. And fortunately, the guys had just purchased a whole bunch of the Frank Sinner's Moulin Rouge nightclubs, sets, and costumes. So all of a sudden, we had this wonderful connection that just helped to enrich the actual production of Incredibly Strange Creatures.
Thirsty?
Oh, bless you.
Carolyn is
Yes.
thirsty.
Requested a wine, which will make this even more fun.
Cheers.
Cheers.
You know. So,
that movie, that was the movie that you first worked with George Morgan, the producer?
yes,
And so you said at one point that George got cold feet.
yes, right before we were going to shoot, everything was set, and he backed out. And Ray figured if he could just get it going, George would come back in. We needed some money. I went to my grandmother, and she coughed us up $600.
Amazing.
And we could get started on Monday with the show. And by Monday, we were shooting, and George had come back in.
Thank God, right? Because without Grandma's $600, it's possible we would not all be sitting here right now. Who knew that Nana's $600 would make such a difference?
Can I talk about the cameraman?
Yeah, go ahead.
All right. On Wild Guitar, Steckler had Joe Michelli
Yeah.
and
On Creatures.
and Zygmunt. Vilmos Zygmunt.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that was a double threat there. And then on Creatures, he had Vilmos Zygmunt and Joe Michelli and Laszlo Kovacs all at one time. These are incredible cinematographers.
And
that
they all
went-
called
Yes.
Ray a cinematographer's cinematographer.
Yeah,
They thought so highly of him.
Yeah, this is amazing. If anybody in there has not seen The Incredibly Strange Creatures yet, you need to watch this because this is cinema history right in front of you because these guys went on to be the best of the best at what they do. And they started with Ray, and Ray helped teach them, which is amazing.
Oh,
That's it.
little aside in Wild Guitar, Ray had Vilmos on ice skates for the skating scene, and he pushed him out there and recreated a shot that I think was a lift from On the Beach, a circular shot going around and around during the kiss.
And I love that one. But the one I love the most is when Nancy Czar is dancing at this show, and the backlighting is so phenomenal.
Ray really was a genius at lighting.
Yeah, yep, I would agree.
And I assume that people in here are film nerds enough to know maybe who we're talking about, but if you're not, we should probably do a quick bio of these guys. Who Joe Michelli is.
Do you want me to?
I mean,
I have this stuff.
Yeah, I mean, he's the guy that wrote literally the manual, the American Cinematography manual.
5 Cs.
He wrote the 5 Cs of cinematography and the American Cinematography Manual. So that's a big name. And then, but even bigger names certainly, Vilmos Zygmunt and Laszlo Kovacs.
So these guys were from. Okay, I made a note of this in my book. So here you go. Kovacs and Zygmunt were fellow students at the Film and Drama Academy in Budapest during the communist-controlled Hungary in the 1950s. This is all true. The two covertly filmed the fighting between the Russian soldiers and Hungary citizens. Then they made their ways to the Austrian border, where they posed as peasants. All true. They hid their film cans in bales of hay by day and traveled only by night. Once in Austria, the duo edited their footage proper and sold it to a producer who titled it the 1956 documentary Ungarn and Flammen. That's my little Rammstein there, which translates to Hungary on Fire. It took the film 5 more years to make it stateside, where CBS aired it in 1961. These guys, as she has told me, are freedom fighters.
Yes, they were. And when they first came over, they were going as Billy and Leslie, trying to blend into the business and just be more convenient for people to know their names. But they did make their own name, and they went back to their fabulous names with their fabulous list of Oscars between the two of them. You can go up to IMDb and check all the things that they had done.
Yeah, and I mean, for this crowd, what Laszlo Kovacs did, Hell's Angels on Wheels and Hell's Bloody Devils, and eventually did Easy Rider and 5 Easy Pieces and Paper Moon.
Which one did Close Encounters?
That would be Vilmos Zygmunt.
Okay,
yeah.
I mean, these guys.
And also did Psycho A Go-Go and The Sadist and Blood of Ghastly Horror.
Yes, these are our guys, man. These guys wins.
And then Close Encounters, and then The Deer Hunter, and The Witches of Eastwick. Big hoorah for The Witches of Eastwick. So I guess we're kind of playing around with it. What were they like to work with?
The easiest.
Yeah.
Just really the easiest. They loved the craft, and they just got to work and did it all. And a lot of those shoots that we did, they were off hours, but there we were young in Hollywood, and we just wanted to make it.
Yeah.
And they did.
The
guys.
Yes, they did. Cheers to them. Thrill Killers?
That's you.
Okay. Okay.
However you want to talk about it.
Well, The Thrill Killers is my favorite Steckler and Carolyn Brandt movie. So, I don't have a lot to ask about it because I know everything there is. So
They don't.
You talk about it. You tell how you went, how you moved from Creatures to the next project.
Oh, I was so busy at home. I had Linda, our first daughter, and I wasn't always around when all the decisions were made, but it was the next opportunity that came along, the next script that he was able to pick up, and it was one of the few that we really did work. Well, Creatures was a script, Thrill Killers was a script, PFINK started out to be a script and changed.
Yes, it did. And that's next.
Yeah.
That will be
That's
next.
his wheelhouse.
Yes.
But, so you had Herb Robbins in that one. You had Gary Kent.
Yes.
You want to talk about
Yes.
those guys at all?
Oh,
Gary.
Don't leave out
Yeah,
Keith O'Brien.
We all, Keith is great. He didn't do anything else, did he?
I don't think so.
No.
No. And he was really good in that.
Uh-huh.
He was
Yeah,
really
he was great.
He
in
was-
that. But we all love Gary Kent. If everybody here has not seen Danger God yet, the documentary on Gary Kent, you have to see this. It's wonderful.
and everybody admits that that is what triggered Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Yep.
That was Gary's story.
Yeah. The Brad Pitt character is based on Gary Kent. So it's good
Speaking
on
of Gary Kent, though, I really think so. You and Ron Burr play this couple, and the whole idea, right? If I assume people maybe have seen the film, but if you haven't, there's three psychos on the loose, and they're trying to meet up with their other psycho friend, and is he brothers? Are they brothers?
Well, Herbie and
Cash.
Cash. What the hell's his name in that movie? Drawing a blank.
Mad Dog Click.
Mad Dog.
Oh,
Mad
yeah.
Dog. Herbie and Mad Dog are brothers.
Yeah.
But you know they never cross paths in the movie.
Right, that's the whole point.
Yeah.
Because you guys shot that stuff later, right? That was more padding, wasn't it?
Mhm.
As I recall, that stuff with Ray was actually added later. But in my opinion, so you and Ron Burr play this couple, and then you end up at this house where the three killers are. And I really think, for those of you who haven't seen the scene, it is one of the most truly harrowing scenes of its era. It's really, really incredible. Was that scene scary? I mean, do you remember what it was like to shoot that? Gary Kent is very scary.
Oh,
He's very intense.
He is
Absolutely.
intense. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I remember doing a lot of running, and unfortunately, I was successful the first take in getting away from the maniacs. So
Why is
we
that
had to
unfortunate?
reshoot. We had to reshoot, and we did not have a lot of film. As I think you said in your book, or one of the interviews, talks about the fact that so much of what we did was with short ends.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And
Folks know what short ends are?
Yeah.
That's when you don't have a full roll of film. You
Yeah.
picked it up, somebody else shot, but they didn't use all the film. So you grab it, and maybe out of a 1,000-foot reel, there might be 200 or 300 feet of film left.
Right. So you keep changing.
And this was all 16 millimeter too. That's how low budget it was.
And here we are talking about it.
Yes, we are. We survived.
So, C.B. Beaumont from PFINK A BOO BOO is like your first sort of starring role, right? You're the big female lead in that
Yeah.
character, and it coincides with making the biggest narrative jump that you and Ray probably would make together. So, what was it like to be in a film that goes from being a dramatic thriller bordering on horror film to a screwball superhero comedy? Spoiler alert.
Well, I was having fun. I loved acting, and I thought, oh, another dramatic opportunity, and I get scared. And this is what we're doing. We're making all these films. And as I said, you know, we had shot the first date scene with Ron and myself, and we pull up to the house, and he gets me out of the car, and he turns, and he kisses me. Ray was a little protective, and he lost interest in the thrill and decided to go in this other direction.
So we've mentioned Ron Haydock. Now Ron got involved with you during the Thrill Killers, and then was the sort of male lead of this. What was Ron? Ron was an interesting guy, a mid-century sort of Renaissance man who was a author. He wrote and edited monster magazines. He was being groomed by Forey Ackerman, so they even said, to take over Famous Monsters of Filmland. He obviously wanted to act. He wrote that film. Well, he wrote the beginning of that film anyway, right?
Yes.
And so what was that guy like to work with?
Ron had kind of a sardonic approach to everything. He was always looking back and making snarky comments about stuff. But he and Ray did get along very well together. I don't think they really clashed on the scripts at all. I think they just kind of worked it out together.
Now the story is that the plot of Rat Fink came from an actual event that happened to you?
Yes. Started having a caller who would call in, and it was harassment, and he claimed that Ray was dating his sister, which actually could have been true. Well, it is what it is. But it was just a lot of harassment, and then whatever Ray got that came along the way, he always managed to use it one way or another, so that's what happened.
And so the story was, right, that they caught him red-handed?
That's what he said. I wasn't there, I don't know. And I don't think, I'll tell you this, and I don't think I've ever mentioned it to either of you. Ray told me that the caller was Titus Moody.
I have heard that.
Okay.
Yep.
Titus, of course, being Boo Boo
Yes.
in Rat Fink A Boo Boo.
Very ironic.
He was also in Creatures, and he was also in Thrill Killers.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that was the three. I think that was it.
I can't.
He was gone after that.
Wasn't there
Yeah.
a big part someplace else? Anyway.
Not after that.
Not after that one. You actually continued to be CB in the Lemon Grove Kids.
Yeah.
So was that the same CB?
Sort of.
Yeah.
It was just, Ray was, we didn't have a lot of money. We didn't change things too much. What was set, we kind of stayed with, maybe veered off in a little bit different direction, but there was a certain continuity to it all.
Yeah, especially if you watch it all in order, there is a continuity to it. And there's a singular vision that Ray had that you obviously went along with.
Right. Although
and if you watch them in order, it's there. It's really cool. And
right.
I know John here has talked about the Paul Naschy stuff, having a singular vision. And Steckler is the same. He's the same way. He has a singular vision. You watch them all through. It's great. It's really fun.
Probably the only diversion I had was when I played the vampire lady from outer space in Lemon Grove Kids.
Why is that?
Why is it? Well,
How was it a diversion? Because you
Well-
got to bite Coleman Francis?
yes. And he wasn't salty enough for my taste.
Coleman Francis, the character actor and director of Beast of Yucca Flats.
Great movie.
You got one?
Oh, well, you wanted to ask about tickles.
Go ahead.
Okay. Lemon Grove Kids.
Mhm.
Your kids were really
Our kids.
they were there,
And most of the crew.
and Aaron wants to know how Tickles got her name, and I have a footnote for that one. So
Okay. Well, it was very simple. Linda was going on 4. I was pregnant with Laura. It was coming close to Christmas time, and there was a baby doll advertised on TV called Tickles, and Linda wanted Tickles. So unfortunately, we couldn't afford baby doll, but Tickles arrived in time, and she got her Tickles.
So my footnote is a company called Deluxe Redding manufactured Tickles, the doll, in 1963. She's about 20 inches long, and with one single D battery, you could spank her, and she would cry, or you could
You had to
tickle
spank her with a D battery?
Right. And yeah, right. Touche. And you could tickle her, and she would laugh. And I brought a picture of the Tickles doll.
Chris tells me that's a very hard picture to find.
Oh, I
It is
bet.
finding a print quality picture of a Tickles doll from 1963 is not that easy.
Can you hold it up?
And
There you go.
Chris,
And it's as awful looking close up as it might be from back there.
okay, Chris, and you have a little sidebar on that one because you just commented on Laura, who's working with IATSE now, and she was showing off one of her pieces of equipment.
Okay.
It was a pickle,
Oh, yeah.
and a pickle
Tickle is in,
remote.
yeah, Tickle is in a pickle. Yes, yes, yes. This is a really big aside, but Laura Tickles, if you know who she is, she does production work on stage crews out in LA, and so she sets up rock concerts, and that's what she does. That's one of her things. And so there's some apparatus she uses that's called a pickle, and somebody made a joke about Tickles being in a pickle. And that's what she's referring to. But she's still in the entertainment industry, and it's awesome. And Laura's great.
The pickle is for the lift gate on trucks.
Okay, all right, then you know. Yeah, very good, very good. Thank you for chiming in.
A lift
on that.
gate
Yeah.
on trucks,
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
which she just fell off of and broke her leg because one of the truck drivers pulled away not knowing that there were two people in the back of the truck.
Park the Teamsters.
Have a damaged Tickles.
Hey, no, she is.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's really messed up. Her leg is really messed up.
So tell us about the next movie you all made together is Body Fever, aka The Last American B Movie, aka Super Cool. I don't know that it had any other titles, but
It did.
it has a very different feel. It feels a lot more straightforward than the stuff you've been making. Some
Yeah.
people say it feels more like more like a Hollywood style movie. So your character, Carrie Erskine, what was she like? Who was she?
She was looking for an easy way out, and she became the target of a search. And Cash Flag was the detective that they hired to find Carrie Erskine, and that led to involvement.
Yeah. And you said also for that film that the scene that Ray and Coleman Francis do in the laundry is the most poignant thing that he ever did. Why do you think that that's so poignant?
We loved Coleman. He was a sweet man. He bounced around Hollywood for years, and he was on a decline. And the scene, and Ray, we genuinely cared for him. And that scene when Ray talks to him, I just watched it the other day. I had to, and it still brings tears to my eyes. Just the interaction between the two of them.
In so many ways, if you haven't seen it for a while, it's a metaphor for kind of what Coleman was going through at the time.
Exactly.
You know, this laundry that he has owned has been stripped away kind of because of the people around him, and he doesn't have anything left. As I recall, for that scene, he was so excited that he went out and spent the last, whatever it was, $20 that he had on a new suit to be able to be in the film. He was destitute, but he still spent whatever dimes he had so he'd look good in this movie. Very different feeling film. And then I guess right after, not right after that, but fairly shortly after that, what is that, 69?
Yes.
And so then that 70, 71, you moved to Vegas.
Mm-hmm.
So what prompts the move to Las Vegas?
Ray was offered the opportunity to direct a TV pilot up in Vegas called The Wig and I. It was about a showgirl who had started to go blind, and people had contributed for her surgery, and she'd come through it, and the feeling was, let's do this pilot, and Ray was available. So he packed us up and took us up to Hollywood, and we moved into the house on Florence, which we used as we used all of our homes. It's kind of a travel log of every home that we ever lived in. And we moved in there, and pilot didn't go over. And there we were in Vegas.
So you're in Vegas, and there's not much film work going on, so I guess you all just decided to put something together yourselves, and along comes Blood Shack, aka the CHOOPER.
Made on credit cards. Out in the middle of Pahrump.
Death Valley, if you don't know.
And it looks every bit of Death Valley. So well, it was a much smaller in scope film. It feels like when you were out in Los Angeles, you had this sort of bigger group of people hanging around, and the Chooper's a much smaller in scope film. Now you do carry over one actor. Ron Haydock appears as the Chooper, but that's because Ron was...
Gave it away.
Sorry. If you didn't know. So why was Ron in that film?
He was available.
How available?
He was sleeping on our couch.
So he kind of came out there whenever you were in Vegas.
Yes, I can't quite remember why, except I think Mary Demas, who was in Thrill Killer, she was at the beginning, and Mary and I had danced together for Turner and Smith, the guys who started in Creatures. See, everything ties together. And they had been together, and at that point they weren't together, and he was sleeping on our couch.
The big purple monster.
Actually, Laura corrected me. I thought it was the Purple Monster. That was Leonard Nimoy in one of his early movie series back in the 50s. And I asked him about that. He wasn't too happy to have it be reminded of it. But it was the Green Monster.
Okay, the Green Monster.
Because he would sleep on our couch, get up for coffee, and he'd wrap himself up in this green chenille bedspread. And
Tickles
would come out there and called him the Green Monster. The kids loved to rag on him.
So after you do the Chooper, what was the film work like?
I beg your pardon. We did the Chooper. Oh, okay.
And then not much.
No. I finally got to the point where I said, I got tired of working for $5 an hour at the Camelot Health Spa and the Robert's Decorative Accessories, both of them part-time jobs, so we knew we had some food on the table, and Ray was kicking around. He tried various things, the furniture shop at one time, just various things. Then he met that one lady, I think she was a distributor out of Texas, and he started doing some stuff for her. I'm trying to remember what the stuff was. That goes into some of the other stuff that he did.
Do you want to talk about The Strangler at all? Hollywood Strangler? Because you're going to be screening this when we're done.
Okay.
Hollywood Strangler meets Skid Row Slasher. Do you want
Okay,
to talk
that
about
was
that at all?
a new turn. At that point, I went from being a brunette to a redhead. Big difference. When we made Hollywood Strangler, we had divorced, and I was, Linda and I moved out. I was living in an apartment across from the university, which I was badly struggling to get through so I could get my degree and get to more work that would be more beneficial. And he had this idea, and Ray lived, I think he patterned his life after the movie The Bad and the Beautiful. And this was part of it, bringing people back in constantly. Even though they left, they could still be drawn back in. So I let him draw me back in, and we shot it.
Talking about The Bad and the Beautiful with Kirk Douglas.
Yes.
Okay. Well, there's homework assignment. Figure that one out. But I do have a quote here from a really good book called The Slasher Movie Book about the Las Vegas serial killer, which this one usually gets panned really hard, and I actually liked it. I have a soft spot for this movie, and this guy did too. So he says, Ray Dennis Steckler's burlesque slasher movie appears immune to Halloween's influences. This decidedly low-budget production has a rather staid, almost documentary-like approach to the on-screen mayhem. It at least has a novelty of two killers. One who strangles models, and the other, a woman, who slashes tramps. So I always like that. Because usually this movie gets pretty bad reviews, and that book, that guy, I like him. J.A. Kurzweil.
And one thing that hasn't really been brought out when they talk about Strangler is that my character was sort of a modern day vampire in that each time she kills, it's not that she draws blood, but she draws more energy to herself and starts looking a little bit more together and a little bit more together, till toward the end it's pretty nice.
I point that out in the book, though.
Oh, you do? Thank you.
And I mean, before that film, you're often, I mean, I guess Carrie's character is a cat burglar, but often you're playing sort of, you end up as a damsel in distress in a couple of films, you're a dancer. But in this movie, you're a tramp slasher. So how did that feel? That must have been slightly different.
Well, what triggered that was in the CHOOPER, I think I made the comment that all these years, all these women are helpless and they're always running around screaming, Liz Renee and the Thrill Killers, me and Thrill Killers. So finally, in the CHOOPER, at one point, Ron and Jason are fighting with each other, and I finally say, what the heck? And I grab a shovel and I slam Ron with the shovel. So I guess that's what started it.
That's right.
And the story goes, you actually hurt his ankle. So when he's
Yes.
when he's limping away, he's really limping.
Oh, it wasn't the shovel. I threw
A 2x4.
A 2x4 at him.
Yeah.
Yeah, I always thought that was some good acting until I found out that he got wanked in the leg for real and was actually limping away.
I actually kind of felt bad for him.
And I was a lousy shot because I was trying to miss and I hit him.
So after you and Ray split, and after this film, your life became really different. As you sort of alluded to, you went back to school, did really well. And what did you do after that?
First of all, I was very fortunate and I got a job with Prudential Beige because my degree was in financial consulting, and started doing muni bonds around the state of Nevada, which was wonderful. I got to the point where in the good old days of muni bonds, we used to have bond closings when the thing went through, and we would fly off to New York or Chicago for due diligence meetings with the lawyers, or we would have a closing in San Francisco. So it was a very lovely time. And then Rostenkowski's Tax Act hit, and at that time, the muni bonds, there was a limitation in how much you could do, and the projects we were working on wiped that out like in one project. So the group I was working for retreated to Salt Lake City, and I didn't want to continue with the muni bonds at that point. It wasn't doable. So I was doing some volunteer work and wound up working for United Blood Services.
In Texas.
Well, they sent me down to Texas because I started as a volunteer, and all of a sudden, bingo, we need a problem solved down here in San Angelo, Texas, which was a very interesting community. They, during Desert Storm, they had watched all the water supplies because this was a former Air Force base, and at that point they had transferred to cryptography and cartography, so they were doing all the secret spy work flying over the Middle East and Russia, and so it was quite interesting, and that was a good time.
That's an almost Carrie Erskine-like story ending right there.
Yeah.
So that takes us to the end of the questions we have, and we're at the point where it's a good time, I think, if anybody out there has questions for Carolyn. Art is right on it.
Thank you. So when Ray Dennis Steckler switched over for a period and was making hardcore, did those sets feel like a continuation of what was going on before, or did it feel like a total departure? Was it like night and day, or did it still feel like a Ray Dennis Steckler production when he was making those movies?
He used to say sometimes he got so bored with shooting some of that stuff, he'd just roll over and tell them, set the camera up and go to sleep.
All right.
Anybody else?
Other questions? Did we cover her career so thoroughly?
Yes.
John?
So, being in all of these movies that were not Hollywood blockbusters, how does it feel to be here in front of fans that still remember this stuff that society have never even seen?
Well, this is wonderful to me. I did things, and it was like it was going out into the ether with no echo coming back. And a few years ago, I got a fan letter, and another year went by, and I got another fan letter from Switzerland. And the whole time when Ray was running around from the 80s through 09, I knew he was going to places, but he never asked me to show up to anything except that one meeting in Sacramento. I think it was around about 2005. And that was with, Herbie was there, and I think we probably did PFINK at that point. That was my only other opportunity to meet anybody who'd ever seen our films. So it's delightful being here and meeting people who know what we actually did and realize it wasn't going out into the ether with no echo coming back.
That reminds me, I was going to mention to everybody too, you know, obviously you should come over to her booth and meet her. And if you haven't seen all the films and you don't know about it, Severin just put out a really astonishingly great box set. And I'm not just saying that because I did commentary on it, but because I really think it's an amazing box set. And if you buy one from the Severin booth, you can get a free signature as well on the box set this weekend. So you should definitely come and talk with Carolyn, who you will be the first, amongst the very first to get a chance to do so.
Yes, I thank you, and I've got pictures there too, if anybody really wants it. And of course, the classic one is the lake shot from Creatures. It never goes away.
Okay, well, everybody help me thank Carolyn Brandt.
Thank you.